Airbnb's mission is both simple and powerful, to help create a world where you can belong anywhere. Alex Schleifer, Airbnb's head of design, fully embraces this mission. To create the products that make the Airbnb experience so welcoming and immersive, he also believes in being product-driven and organizes his teams in an engineering product design structure, which they also call the triforce. Have a listen as Aarron and Eli talk with Alex about the advantages of this team structure and about some of the problems companies run into when they try to create a design-led culture. They also dig into Airbnb's mission and vision and talk about the trade-offs between quality and speed when building products. Enjoy this episode, and may the Triforce be with you.
Support for Design Better comes from Gusto, who make running a small business easy. Get 3 months free at gusto.com/designbetter once you run your first payroll. Running a small business is hard work, especially all of the payroll, quarterly tax filing stuff, and HR things. I'd rather be focused on my business and my customers than dealing with the administrative duties. But Gusto makes it easy. They automate the complicated parts of running a business. With Gusto, I never miss federal or state payroll tax filings, and I love the time off requests and time tracking tools. Gusto even offers a small group health insurance option for nearly any budget. When you run into issues you need help with, their HR experts are ready to help. It's a very well-designed product, easy to use, and great emotional design that will put a smile on your face. Design Better listeners get 3 months free once they run their first payroll. Just go to gusto.com/designbetter. That's gusto.com/designbetter. I've worked with lots of search firms, both as a leader searching for new talent for my teams, and as an individual exploring new steps in my career. But I trust none more than Wirt & Company. Since 1995, Wirt & Company has been the design community's most trusted search firm, co-founded by a designer and led by a CEO who has in-house operational startup experience. Wirt & Company is guided by the principle that creative leadership is essential to business success. They've helped some of the most admired brands from early-stage startup to Fortune 500 build world-class creative teams. We're talking about companies like Airbnb, the New York Times, the Four Seasons, Notion, Figma, Google, Cartier, and Fair. Not bad. If you're looking for a partner to help you find the right person for a critical role, look no further than Wirt & Company. And if you're looking for your next design leadership role, Wirt & Company will guide you through the process as a friend and a champion throughout your journey. They take the time to get to know you, to understand what you need professionally and personally. Whether you're looking for your next role or your next team member, Wirt & Company can help you find a meaningful relationship. Visit wirtco.com to learn more and get in touch. That's WERTCO.com.
Alex Schleifer, Airbnb, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. We're happy to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about life growing up and your background.
So my parents traveled a lot, and specifically around the Mediterranean and the Middle East. So I grew up in countries where we would move a lot, and there would be countries where I wouldn't have that much access to computers, but my parents always managed to find a way to find technology, which was something I was passionate with since the early days. Since I was probably 7 years old, I was toying with computers, and so growing up, I was a kid that loved to draw, loved computers. Kept reading, sometimes month-old magazines because we used to live in countries where some of these things weren't readily available, and I built up this passion for making stuff on computers. Thought I was going to make video games. Still think that one day I'm going to make a video game. And then the teenage. I was a teenager around 17. The internet happens. Really lucky because it kind of gives me a job to do, right? It goes from being just a passion, and I'm pretty sure my parents were unsure of where I was heading with this, specifically because I was focusing a lot on the more creative side of things, storytelling, just building interactive pieces, and the internet happens, which means that even though we didn't live in in any of the technology centers of the world, it meant we all of a sudden had access to knowledge, but also clients, people who wanted websites to be built. And from there, starting from 17, quit high school, more or less, and started a web design business. And from there, I did that for a good 20 years until my company was acquired. And then joined a great company called Say Media, which was a digital media company. Moved to San Francisco, which was kind of a big deal, considering this was the center of the world. This was always the place I wanted to land at some point. And then 3.5 years later, had the opportunity at Airbnb, and Airbnb was actually my first ever job interview, which is daunting. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever done. And now I'm here.
Now, and you, the business that you started up, what year was that it started? It's the late 90s?
Oh, yeah, late 90s, 97, 98.
Okay.
Early days,
Cutting edge.
We had one computer, and we were so it was my brother and a good friend of ours and myself, and I would do the graphics. My brother would do the programming, and our friend was the IT guy. But the problem is we only had one computer, so we would take turns kind of working on different parts of a project, and we would all of our clients would think that we were a real business, but we were three kids in a bedroom with a single computer.
Right.
But you got to start somewhere.
And what was it like working with your brother?
Oh, that I feel lucky that I had he's 3 years younger. He's incredibly smart. He also moved to San Francisco. And early in the early days, I wanted to be an engineer. Or I thought I did, and then my 9-year-old brother comes in and can code better than I ever could. After 3 months, and that he showed me that I was on the wrong path, and probably pushed me more towards design than I would have otherwise. And we always had that great working relationship because there isn't a ton of overlap. We complement each other.
It's interesting. So you got pushed into design because you saw that engineering wasn't the right path. But it sounds like that relationship you had with your brother, I mean, you guys spent probably a lot of time together, and you must have had a strong relationship. And I wonder if working with your brother, who's an engineer, and that's kind of a different mindset than a designer, how does that influence the work that you're doing today? Because you've got to work with a lot of different engineers and people with different mindsets.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I worked with an engineer before I worked with other designers, and I think I probably worked with my brother William at least for 2 or 3 or 4 years before I met another designer that was doing the same job I was. So for me, the relationship with engineering and the engineering mindset and understanding, what goes into actually building and shipping something, it's nearly alien to me not understanding that, right? And it's something I had to actually learn to see. I had to learn how to really get the perspective of someone who hasn't really connected with engineering at the level I had. Because first of all, I was a failed engineer, and I tried, and I still want to be. It's like learning the guitar. I still want to be able to do it one day. And the other thing is that I never thought of what I did as something I could do without an engineering component. So I either had to learn it myself or work with folks who knew how to do this. And I think it gave me, hopefully not a unique perspective, but at least my relationship with engineering feels easy and natural. And in some ways, I had to learn what it means not to understand that so I could bridge those gaps for others. Because part of me, I think, thinks more like an engineer than a designer sometimes. So it's been interesting, but very lucky, I think, because that's how I've been working since I was very young.
That's great, Alex.
share some parallels in that I'm also sort of a recovering engineer, and I've worked with my brothers over the years. So I think those are cool stories to hear. A lot of the folks that we talk to at Airbnb talk about the really good rapport between engineering and product and design. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you see kind of that happening at Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, at a very basic level, we look at we're pretty settled in an EDP structure. Engineering, design, and product. Working together with a shared accountability of just delivering a great product, great results for our business, great experience for our users. And so the people I interface with, the most are really the head of engineering and the head of product, and we really operate as a unit, which is great. And we try to replicate that structure within every team. And so, there's definitely differences. Engineering teams are, of course, much larger on average. And we all have our own sets of responsibilities. But in general, the teams, I think the teams that operate in the healthiest way, when you walk into the room, you actually don't notice who's the designer or who's the engineer, right? And people are having broad product conversations, understanding that they each represent an initiative, each represent a discipline that will lead us to some successful outcome. Now, there's of course tied to that. There's data science and research and content strategy and translation. There's all sorts of discipline wrapped into this, but we really look at this as design, engineering, and product. And design has a really broad definition. At Airbnb, it includes research, it includes all sorts of things. So when you're in the room, once you recreate that structure and you build these relationships and you build specifically kind of an environment of trust between those different teams, and then you give them an environment where building stuff is easy and natural. Then I think you can create a pretty healthy environment, and on top of that, Airbnb's culture and values and the way we treat employees here is pretty exceptional, and so that all helps create foster an environment of trust. Beyond that, a lot of the tensions between engineering and design, I believe, are actually technical process things that you can solve. So we're investing heavily in tools. We're investing heavily in process and education to iron out, to smooth out those gaps between engineering and design, which are a lot of things that just can be solved with just better tooling and better education. And it's incredible just what having a great way of systematic way of delivering assets to an engineer and a shared vocabulary that you have on both teams can help iron out any of those kind of rougher patches that usually happens in product development. So pretty successful. I think it's interesting, and this industry and this neighborhood, this part of the world is interesting because, we always talk about the tech culture and the that exists here in Silicon Valley, but it's actually every culture, every company is so different. The way every company treats design and treats the relationship between design and engineering and product management is so different. That you have, and there's a fair amount of movement from one company to another. So the cultures are always mixing, and it means that as a company grows, you're absorbing different parts of different cultures, cutting some parts out, learning new things, unlearning old things, and it's always interesting seeing somebody come in from a culture that is more engineering driven or more design driven. Move into Airbnb and have to adjust to potentially hopefully this more egalitarian, structure that we have, and hopefully they see the benefit of that. But I'm definitely happy with it.
those that do make that transition, how do they manage to adapt, and what's the outcome for them? Do they feel like, hey, this culture over at Airbnb is so different and I don't feel comfortable with it? Or do they kind of warm up to it and start to see the value of being more egalitarian?
I think it's, first of all, the environment here is incredibly welcoming. So there's that as a safety net while people adjust. So I think it can take like a month or two to adjust to this new structure. Most of the worries really come from how can you move quickly? How can you move quickly when there's a process of shared accountability like this, right? And I think that that is then you need to put your trust in people and in the relationships that they build, that you can make decisions quickly and have access to each other and trust each other to make certain decisions so that you can keep moving quickly. And just centralizing the decision-making process isn't always the quickest way to move forward. So once you kind of take this leap and you get into that flow and you build a trusted relationship with your peers, with really, what is your first team, your engineering counterpart, your product counterpart, your data scientist, your researcher. Once you create this team relationship, then it really feels like what everybody misses, which is that, that first time they worked in a small team and everybody was, kind of syncing every day and moving forward in the same direction and operating as a small unit. But it requires a level of trust, I think. And it requires us as a leadership team and as an organization to create environments where these types of behaviors can grow. So everything from the way our office is designed to the tools that we're building, to the processes, to the way we share information is aimed at that. We're still a young company. There's still a lot of stuff to learn, but I feel good about the direction we're heading into.
You mentioned in answering the last question that you've got folks coming in from other companies that are maybe a little more engineering-led or perhaps design-led. And then there was also an article where you talked about some of the problems that people have in design-led companies. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think I have to be careful because there's, part of the issue we have in our industry and in our specific discipline is taxonomies and the wording of things and the multiple meanings that we apply to different things. I strongly feel that having any discipline being a leading discipline is not a productive way of moving forward. Now, of course, if you're a design agency, that's different. That's what you do, right? If you're an architecture firm, that's what you do. But I think when you're delivering a product, and that product is the sum of the work of multiple disciplines, from product specialists to data scientists to designers to illustrators to engineers, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice by saying, we want to be design led. Now, I think you absolutely need this to be design thinking led. I think those are things that apply to everyone. But I worry when the decision making process is centralized around a single discipline that doesn't hold all the knowledge. And I wanted to make sure that specifically in a company that is founded, 2 of our 3 founders are designers. They both went to RISD. That inherent bias that came from that, that expected bias wasn't something that we were going to, build upon. I think I think Brian and Joe are also understand that this concept of design is and designing a great product is the combination of all these different skill sets. So build bridges, working with different craftspeople on creating something really wonderful. That's why we're in this. And so I think it's nice. I would, there's something very exciting about having an ivory tower model where I would work with a group of designers and craft some future facing product idea. but it's really much more empowering and I think more fun longer term to be mixed into the group. Like I said, you walk around and you don't really notice, and you don't really get a sense of this is a designer, this is an engineer, and this is a front-end engineer. It's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of people in there, and I think you can fill every part of this gradient with different skill sets, and the definition between designer and engineer is even a fuzzy one at times. So I just wanted to make sure that we remain pragmatic and that we look at this more holistically as a company, and I think we should as an industry as well.
You joined Airbnb in 2015, and you were the first head of design for Airbnb. Is that right?
That is right.
Was there a head of engineering leading up to that, or?
Yeah. Mike Curtis is VP of engineering. And he was here when I got here, and also a VP of product. I think it's a scale issue, and it's a maturity issue, and it's a growth issue in the company. Engineering, there's no specific ratio, but engineers can easily outnumber designers 8-10 to 1. And so you need that structure built into that very early. At the time, I think the team and Katie Dale had joined before that, and she was managing much of that team. She's director of UX, but the team was pretty flat and working directly with a lot of the founders on a lot of the initiatives, and that I think that worked fine and must have been really incredible in the early days, as small teams kind of working together on a really exciting project. As we needed to start scaling, we needed to apply a little bit more structure. And so we nearly, tripled or quadrupled the team in 2 years. And to get that done, they needed a VP of design to come in. So
yeah. And that's something we hear a lot from other organizations too, is that engineering and product, they scale early on and they have to figure out how to operationalize very quickly. And then design, it seems like in so many companies, they're just figuring this out. How do we operationalize? How do we make our process more efficient? How do we align our work and our activities with these other two pillars of the organization? Can you talk a bit about how, now that you've been at this for a couple of years at Airbnb, you've got a process that's pretty solid, and you've got a strong rapport, it sounds like, with heads of product and engineering. How do you align your activities and the structures within each one of these pillars?
Well, we haven't figured everything out, but I think we're doing a pretty good job at it. I think first of all is creating clarity within the organization, and we're constantly iterating and simplifying our org structure so that it's easy to describe to somebody coming into the organization how it is structured. I think that's something that a lot of companies struggle with in the early days, and it usually gets better over time. I think preferably it would have been great to start with a head of, a VP of product, VP of eng, a head of product, head of eng, head of design right from the beginning, to make sure that people were in sync and creating the strategies and the structures around that. I feel that my first 6 months to a year was a lot of catching up to that and building the relationship with Mike and Jobot, who lead these other teams. I think at this stage we've reached this cadence. We'll meet or talk every day at some level. We discuss the product, we discuss features, we discuss organizational issues, but we're all very close to what's happening within the company, and these are just conversations that are happening naturally. And then we have our individual our individual responsibilities that we just trust that each of us is going to do. So it's strange. There's no magic bullet. I think the investment in the relationship has been huge, right? And the trust building at this level, and then making sure that gets replicated at every level in the organization as much as possible. It's pretty hands-on. It's very much about maintaining just constant conversation. The company moves incredibly fast, and so it can happen that we're out of sync at times. But whenever that happens, we'll just jump on a call or grab breakfast or check in and catch up. So the thing I've noticed is having us three as aligned and as in sync as possible has a tendency of creating a pretty productive kind of environment around us. And when we're not, it creates chaos. So that's what we've been working on. Then on the teams themselves, I have incredible leverage. I have incredible people on my team, and so do Mike and Jobot on the PM and Eng sides. And that's another thing, right? It took us 2 years to get to a point where you have incredible directors, incredible managers running teams that have really not only understood the culture, but also invested in it, helped us build it. And so folks like Katie and Judd on the research team, and Adrian on design ops, Marissa on content strategy, we have, just incredible people. And I think it makes the job so much easier. And once again, I think it's trying to build trust and having as much of an open door policy with everyone, so that whenever something arises, you're just a phone call away, or you can walk across the office. And in general, as a company, we've managed to maintain that culture of openness. So none of us have offices at the leadership level. We're usually sitting or hanging around a specific area. So people from the team will literally come by and find us and be able to say, hey, I have just this thing I need to talk to you for 30 seconds. And this I feel is generating an environment where things get aired out early enough, and we can tackle them. Once again, organization scales as quickly as ours. It's a lot of work, and we're not getting everything right all the time. But as long as we can kind of maintain trust and hire great people, things are getting easier every day. So it's a very, here's the thing, we're in a very human business. Our entire business is based around people, and our entire company is as well. And sometimes, and definitely dealing with people is harder at times, right? It's less predictable. It's much more high touch, and it's much more emotionally taxing. But that's how we can do all the things that we do, and you see it whenever there's anything that happens, any kind of group gathering or a party, how people from this company interact with each other. Everybody just really trusts the people that they work with, which is huge, which means I can step out for a couple of weeks and everything will be fine, and I think that's a real achievement and an incredible achievement by the founders who set out to do that right from the beginning.
Support for Design Better comes from Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery. Design Better listeners can save 50% on their order at factormeals.com/designbetter50. Use the code designbetter50. You know what happens at my house when things get really busy? In the evenings, we turn to takeout, which can be expensive and it's not very good for our health. Lately, we're making a better choice at crunch time. We turn to Factor for chef-created, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. We like the flexibility of Factor, too. You can change your order up every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or you can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. The meals are so tasty. My wife and I are huge fans, and I like their smoothies, too, which I find are perfect for a quick, healthy breakfast. Factor can help you eat well and feel good while focusing on your career and your family. Head to factormeals.com/designbetter50 and use the code designbetter50 to get 50% off your order. That's code designbetter50 at factormeals.com gusto.com/designbetter50 to get half off your order. Support for Design Better comes from Gusto, who make running a small business easy. Get 3 months free at gusto.com/designbetter once you run your first payroll. Running a small business is hard work, especially all of the payroll, quarterly tax filing stuff, and HR things. I'd rather be focused on my business and my customers than dealing with the administrative duties. But Gusto makes it easy. They automate the complicated parts of running a business. With Gusto, I never miss federal or state payroll tax filings, and I love the time off requests and time tracking tools. Gusto even offers a small group health insurance option for nearly any budget. When you run into issues you need help with, their HR experts are ready to help. It's a very well-designed product, easy to use, and great emotional design that will put a smile on your face. Design Better listeners get 3 months free once they run their first payroll. Just go to gusto.com/designbetter. That's gusto.com/designbetter. Support for Design Better comes from Uplift Desk, who help you work better and live healthier. Eli and I log a lot of hours at our desks, which can be detrimental to one's health if you're not paying attention to ergonomics. Uplift Desk offer high-quality, well-designed desks, chairs, and accessories to help you build an ergonomic workspace for home or work. Eli recently got a standing desk, and I got a human-scale Freedom chair. I've been dreaming about this chair for a long time, and I finally got one. I've already noticed a big change in my posture with this chair, and my body thanks me for it. Eli is logging a lot more hours standing than sitting these days, and he can make quick transitions with the flip of a switch. We love Uplift Desk, and we know that you will too. Design Better listeners can get a special deal by visiting upliftdesk.com and use the code DesignBetter at checkout for 5% off your order. You'll get free shipping, free returns, and an industry-leading 15-year warranty. Go to upliftdesk.com, use code DesignBetter, and get 5% off. Design a better workspace with Uplift Desk.
So you got these great people, and you're moving really fast. I imagine that it really takes a strong vision to keep things moving in the right direction. Can you talk a little bit about vision at Airbnb?
Yeah, I think we're an incredibly lucky company, and part of that is because our business model and kind of the environment we operate in makes it easy to wake up in the morning and be excited about what you're going to work on today. We're talking about travel, we're talking about human connection, hospitality, and all those are things that really you don't need to do the usual acrobatics. So I've worked with companies, as an agency who have gone through kind of big brand transition and tried to align mission, core values, and business into a coherent narrative, right? And sometimes that's difficult. You need to bend a little, and you're saying something, but your business might be doing something else. Airbnb has been dealt this unique hand where all of that stuff lines up pretty naturally. It's like I said, we're in the business of hospitality, which aligns really well with our core values and the way we treat people that come into the company. So our vision, our mission is to build a world where anyone can belong anywhere. And I think what that leads to is making sure that we're building a product that never becomes commoditized. Every experience that we sell, whether it's a home or a cooking lesson or just a walk in the park, is all led and guided and managed by people, by humans. That's one thing. The other one is this idea of feeling like a local, or mostly not feeling like an outsider when you visit a place. And what do you need to do to get to that point where you visit a place for the first time and you feel welcome there, and that guides the product, right? That implies all sorts of decisions that we need to make. And the third part is that it's a truly global business. We can't think in any given language. We can't prioritize, specific countries over others. So it also forces us to really think globally and build this near universal understanding of how the world operates, which we're still really far from totally understanding. I mean, we've just scratched the surface. But our mission, that's that simple concept of belonging anywhere, transforms into all these different, key concepts that help us. I think that keeps us honest. So, like I said, we're lucky. We have a great vision. It's aligned naturally to the brand. It's aligned to the culture of the office. It's aligned to the way people feel and think here, and therefore, it helps us make really great product decisions. It's at least a few times a week, somebody will bring up our mission at a meeting where we're making a product decision to make sure that the decisions we're making align to our mission, and it is done in a non-ironic way, and it is actually a really useful tool. And I can tell you that this is the first time I've seen this happen with so much regularity, and it's really great to have that as a guiding principle, as a North Star, because it keeps the company focused. And if if you're in a company and you're trying to figure this out, it is so incredibly important as you're going to scale, because there's this simple concept that drives everybody in the same direction, more or less, and it can't be corrupted easily. And it helps us keep, it helps us keep us all honest, especially at the leadership level. So, yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting that a vision not only guides product decisions and keeps everyone aligned, but it also can affect the way that a company communicates to the world. For instance, Apple in the late 90s, when Steve Jobs came back, was really a ship without a sail. It didn't have a clear mission, and their product decisions reflected it. And they started the Think Different campaign, which was as much an advertising campaign to the world of how the world should see Apple, but also how the Apple employees should think about their work. And reflecting on what you're describing, build a world where anyone can belong anywhere, and that mission guiding both your product decisions, but also the marketing. There's been some issues with people denying certain people access to their Airbnb listing because of race. And you guys responded to that very clearly and very quickly. And also, for those that aren't paying attention in the world, there was a ban in the United States on certain immigration. And you guys took a really gutsy approach to marketing during the Super Bowl, which is it's not a cheap thing to do, and it wasn't an ad that was communicating this is the offering, this is the product of Airbnb, but these are the people that make up Airbnb. Here's who we are, and we believe that the more inclusive we are, the better we are. Can you talk about how that mission translates into the world and how that affects, company morale, pride in your work?
Yeah, it's funny because from within these walls, it didn't feel like a courageous thing to do. It just felt like the right thing to do and inherently normal for us, because of what we're trying to build, and it is an incredibly complicated business, of course. But I think that at certain stages, there's certain events that happen, whether it's us, being one of the first companies moving into Cuba, or the Super Bowl ad, where we feel, well, this feels like the right time to share the way we think already. And like I said earlier, I think there are no acrobatics that we need to do to make it fit, because it just comes so natural to us, because it actually makes, and to be perfectly pragmatic, all of this makes business sense to us as well, right? Like, we're in the hospitality business, and more people traveling and feeling like they had a really transformational trip through the experiences that they've had on Airbnb is good for us. An interesting thing about the Super Bowl ad is that it is actually a continuation of an internally created campaign that we've had around, the concept of acceptance and making sure that we onboard people in our community with a set of standards in the way, in the behaviors that we expect to see, and so for us it was just and we had already shown a similar type of campaign to the millions of people in our community. But then when there was an opportunity to raise the stakes and show it to an even bigger audience, I think that felt really natural. So we modified it for the Super Bowl. Another interesting fact is that 5 of the people in that ad are actually on the design team, because it's one thing that's really great about here is that a lot of these things actually come from a groundswell of teams and people that are simply demanding for certain things to be done to align to the mission, and they take it upon themselves to initiate stuff, shoot a video and get it, and they're given permission to do that. And so it's just for me, seeing it from where I started, this is like, a self-initiated a project that started from within the company that very quickly got full leadership support, and then the entire company get behind it. We shared it with the entire community, and then months later, as the world is rapidly changing, then we're continuing this message and just delivering it on the Super Bowl, and it's humbling to be there and see that happen. It is kind of crazy, and it is not a cheap thing. But let me tell you, we spent less money. This was something that we did, right? We didn't have to change our message or hire a celebrity or really create this bombastic production to make people listen to our message, and it was so well received. That was, I think it's one of the proudest moments that I've ever had. I was so proud of this company. And everyone from the founders to everyone else that was involved in this.
So as you guys are scaling, the team keeps growing, you're trying to operationalize, there's a balance between quality and speed that, you need to keep moving and shipping things. There are deadlines to be met, but at the same time, you want to take the time to be able to do your best work. You want to produce high quality work. How do you guys rectify those two things that are sometimes at odds?
Part of it is at some point you're going to need to reconcile this idea of compromise and the perfection you always seek, and understand that you're constantly going to be feeling somewhat uneasy about the work that is launching. And I know that to be true even at companies that we think are perfectionist and only launch something when they're perfect. There's a sense of you can be proud about your work, but see every single issue that hasn't been rectified. Every designer knows this. Every designer kind of, gets a little uncomfortable when they get congratulated about this amazing piece of work that they've done because they can see every fault in it. So I think we need to just agree that that's a thing, and that we need to live with it. That being said, velocity and quality don't have to be completely at odds, because what happens when you join a company like Airbnb, and especially if you move from an agency model into a company like this where the product is the single focus, you have time. You have time to try things out, and you need to understand that the feature that you're launching today is going to benefit the feature that you're going the update to that feature that you're going to launch in 3 months, right? So you just want to see progression, and it's about switching from a mindset of this is a launch and there's some finality to that launch to nothing ever being final and everything just being a step in the right direction. And so you're just watching trends. Now, on top of that, I think as a designer, you're always fighting compromise, right? That's kind of the battle you have, and you try to fight off compromise for as long as possible until something has to ship, and you keep doing that. So hopefully the layers of polish and quality kind of just get added on top of that. But this would not be possible without the right tooling. I still, I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I don't think the toolings that are currently available match up to the needs of companies like ours. As a discipline, we spent 20 years using Photoshop and Illustrator and making them do things that they were never built to create, right? I think, and in the last 3 years, we've really seen kind of a revolution in design tools, but we're still very much behind engineering, right? And engineering has been innovating on tools for the past 20, 30 years. And so, we have things like GitHub and all sorts of development platforms that are constantly evolving. And I think we've been pretty stagnant. So, which is why we're investing in a lot of these tools. Tools help us build stuff quicker, which means you have more time to focus on quality, which means that you can deliver assets and communicate with engineers with less of a drop in sync between the different teams. You can keep everybody aligned. All of that adds up to quality. And then on top of that, just making sure that people at every discipline, at every level, understands that quality is important to us. And it is the way we represent our brand. Most people interface with our brand through our product, and quality, dropping quality at the sake of moving quickly is sometimes the wrong solution. So, you need to remain pragmatic. And I can tell you that every time I get a compliment about the app, I see everything that's wrong with it. But I know that it's better today than it was yesterday, and it'll be better tomorrow. And that's what I'm aiming for.
Earlier, you mentioned you have a design ops team, which is a bit of a nascent topic in the design space and product design space that, groups that think about tooling, that think about process. Can you talk a bit about the design ops team at Airbnb? Who's on it, and what sorts of things are they doing?
Yeah, so the design ops team are essentially tool builders. So we have an incredible team of folks building design tools, and that is, both internally built tools, but also integrations and investment in third parties and open source. We just did stuff like we released Lottie, our vector animation engine, and we're building a set of tools that we hope to release this year. So that's one thing. We have program management, which are the folks that basically run programs across the organization. So they have the best sense of what's going on across outcomes or within certain disciplines, and they make sure that we can see ahead and we understand how the operation is functioning. And we also have production designers in there. So we have a great production design capability, which supports all these different efforts and is tied into these new tools and processes. So, I think there isn't a standard definition of what design operations is. For us, it's really about tools, production supports, and process and operations, and that has helped us, I think, scale without just having to throw people at an issue, and that further down the line, and I think to designers, specifically designers, that's important. It allows us to keep teams smaller, and for everyone on that team to have more direct impact on the product. And I think that's incredibly important as a company scales, because the last thing you want to do is create an organization that has grown so much that you essentially, there are roles within it where somebody controls or has manages to influence a tiny part of that experience. So that's the gamble. I think that's the bet we're making, is that investing in those tools allows us to have more engaged and more empowered designers and a potentially smaller design team than a company our size would usually get to.
So this is just something we're curious about, and there's obviously a lot of companies out there that have design at their core, but we're curious if you have any companies specifically that you think you find their process inspiring, or just the way that they embrace design kind of in balance with product and engineering.
I think it depends if you're thinking through if you're talking about engineering specifically in software terms, but I think Nike is an incredibly inspiring company, just because of its age and maturity and how they've managed to really define what creativity means to them, but also the technical innovation component and how these teams work together. And they've managed to, through that, really, move beyond shoes and into, pretty hardcore technology, and some of the innovation that comes out of that company that's been operating for a while, and at the speed that they do it, and that brand loyalty that they've built around it is really impressive. And talking about having a mission-led company, I think there's a very clear sense of purpose in that company, and there's a very clear sense of craftsmanship and cooperation between those different teams, because the weaving technology applies to what you can design, and I think they figured out a lot of that stuff. And so, to me, that's an incredibly, an incredible role model. I feel, looking from the outside, I'm looking at companies like Slack, very impressed with what they've been doing, and I'm also, happy to see just Google and Facebook, which are these huge companies who have invested in design in a meaningful way, and I think it's important for us to realize and appreciate that effort, because it's not easy to shift a company's focus like that. And we're seeing really good things both in tooling and just collaboration between design and engineering coming out of both Google, with things like material design, and Facebook with some of the tools and the open source work that they've been doing. So I feel everybody's contributing towards a better world, and I'm excited to see that happen.
That's great. Well, we're excited to have had you on the show. Thanks so much for your time, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Alex.